Some of you might not know this about me, but I'm a huge fucking pussy. It's true, anytime I'm watching something horror related, I'm always just crawling in my skin with anticipation, waiting for the jump scare that's gonna happen to send me in frantics for 2 seconds. Despite my pussy-esque demeanor, I do like some horror content. My favorite kind of horror is the stuff where it doesn't necessarily startle you in the moment, but it sticks with you. It really plants an idea in your head that is just horrifying in and of itself, and you think about it for days and days afterwards, just ruminating on what if this were to actually happen, what if it could happen, and there's very few videos or films that have managed to make me feel that way. For those of you who don't know, Skinamarink is the first movie in recent memory that I actually screamed at out of fear of. And I thought about that shit for days. I had a hard time sleeping that night, dog. As divisive as the movie is, it definitely scared the fuck out of me. Same with online horror series like Mandela Catalog. Volume 3 is probably a masterclass in anticipation and how to use it tastefully and suspensefully. But I'm not interested in talking about those two things right now, although you should definitely check them out. The thing I'm interested in talking about is one of the only good things British people have ever done. Inside Number 9 is a dark comedy anthology series masterminded by Reece Shearsmith and Steve... what the fuck's his name? Pemberton. Steve Pemberton. Think of it as Black Mirror, except on crack. For a Halloween event on BBC 2, they decided to have a live show, and I think that they did something really good for reasons that I'm going to talk about in a second. I don't want to spoil anything, but sit your fucking ass down. Move your cursor away from that back button, okay? Motherfucker, you are stuck here with me. You're going to listen to me rant about this hyperfixation for 10 minutes, you fucking piece of shit! I'm filming the conclusion part now, but I need to put this in. I'm going to be spoiling the shit out of the episode of Inside Number 9 called Deadline. If you want to check it out, it's available on BBC using their iPlayer thing. I don't know how it works, and if you're not in Britain, you can always use today's sponsor, NordVPN. No, I'm just kidding. There's also an upload of it on Dailymotion, but you didn't get that from me. The episode is called Deadline, and it stars Steve as Arthur, who is an old fuck. He's getting home from doing some errands, including grocery shopping, and as he's putting the groceries away, he remembers he has a phone that he found while he was out, presumably belonging to a stranger nearby. As he's making himself a snack, the phone rings, and he goes to pick it up. However, on the other end is a bunch of weird noises and shit, promptly interrupted by the microwave exploding because he put an egg in it like a fucking dumbass. So he calls back the number, and it belongs to a woman named Moira, who seems fine and dandy. We learn the phone owner's name is Elise, and her and Moira go to church sometimes because their husbands are dead and they have nothing better to do. Arthur gives Moira his phone number, but then Moira calls Elsie's phone to tell her that she lost her phone. She's old. After a little bit of back and forth of Moira not understanding how phone numbers work, she said to contact Reverend Neil, who would know something about Elise's whereabouts. However, before she hangs up, she makes the remark that her husband had just came home. You said your husband is dead, Moira. Which is it? Do you want him dead? I can help you with that. Arthur catches on to this, but it doesn't matter. She hung up already. And we are transitioned into the evening where Reverend Neil comes in, and then the audio cuts out. It's the BBC, man. They need more budget. You gotta pay your telly license. It doesn't matter though, the audio comes back pretty quickly, and Reverend Neil is in the middle of talking about how he held a service for this dead person, presumably Elsie. And after divulging this information, he goes to grab Elsie's phone, but then Arthur is like, no, I talked to Elsie's daughter, and I'm gonna give the phone back to her personally. Right before he's about to ask a question on what else Arthur found on that phone, like a sussy baka, Moira ends up calling the phone again. Arthur picks up, they talk for a second, and then Arthur has to break the news that Elsie... Goddamn, the fucking audio broke again. Without the audio, we can tell that Reverend Neil is leaving the room, probably to give Arthur the time to tell Moira what happened, but then we're given a please stand by card. Listen, I said it was scary, I didn't say it was good quality. They pause, they say the audio will be worked out, and then it cuts back to the show where the audio still doesn't work. Then we go to the please stand by card again, and it is announced that the live show is canceled. I tricked you motherfuckers. You thought you were getting a full, deep analysis of this shit? Fuck you. Unfortunately, the show can't go on with the audio issues, so they say they'll be doing it at a later date, and that's when they start just playing a rerun from the first season of the show. And it's pretty sad, honestly. Imagine putting all this effort together to make something that you want to share with the world, especially doing it live. Like, it's already bad enough that you got the nerves about going on a live thing, right? But then there's all these errors that happen that are just out of your control, and it's not fun. There were about 1 million people waiting for this event, and by about a minute into the rerun, like 20% of them left. So it really just does suck that you were trying to do something good for these people, and then this didn't end up working out, right? Like, it's just... Oh. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh! Surprise! I lied to you again. You thought the live show was over? Nah, motherfucker, it's just getting started. After we cut back to the set of Deadline, now evidently abandoned, we cut back to the please stand by card and the announcer saying, fuck, shit, we're bitch. She begins by saying they're gonna air something, but there's a little voice underneath her saying something inaudible. And then she turns around and is like, yo, is there a bitch there? And then... Couple more shots of the building now through security cameras or from TV cameras. Then it cuts to a shot of a dude eating shit in a medieval trap. We don't have a lot of time to digest that though, because then it cuts to a live feed of the dressing room where the actors Reese and Steve are staying at. They're bitching about the show getting delayed due to technical issues, with Steve saying that they're probably going to get moved to 11 p.m. if that's even possible. They also bring up a rehearsal take they did that they would switch to if anything like this happened, so they don't know why they're using that. And Reese is bitching about how we can't see what people are saying on Twitter about the live show because there's no service where he is, which is based. Anything that gets people farther away from Twitter, I will fucking take. They continue to talk shit a little bit more until it abruptly cuts to an episode from a series called Most Haunted. This is some weird ghost series where the host goes to different places and is like, damn, these bitches be haunting the fuck. And on this episode, they're at Granada Studios, which is where they filmed Coronation Street and other things probably. The medium that they talk to in this episode is saying that he detects a spirit. It's a male in his 50s, either died of a heart attack or an accident while working, and he estimates that he died about 10 years ago. Before we can learn anything else from my boy though, we cut back to the same hallway at the beginning of when shit started to fuck. Elsie's phone, quotation marks, starts ringing, and Stephanie, the actress of Moira, goes over to answer it. We only hear one side of the conversation, but we learn that the person she's talking to is named Alan. They haven't heard of the show Inside Number 9, and she asks if Alan works at the studio before they cut to the next shot. Steve is reading about all the shit that happened in the studio they're filming this from, which includes a priest doing an exorcism, there was a fire in one of the studio spaces, there was the Bobby Darbo thing we saw a clip of earlier, and then he finally reads about a prop man Alan Starr who hung himself 10 years ago. After Reese gets access to Twitter, unfortunately, he gets a message telling him to tune into BBC Two, which they do, and they see that they are currently live broadcasting. Steve gets Reese to make a tweet asking people if they're actually on BBC Two right now, and this tweet is real. It actually came out while this was live. Then Steve decides to keep going through the channels until he lands on one of the studio cameras, which is currently focused on Stephanie still on the phone. Can't ruminate on that too long. We go to the rehearsal take that was mentioned earlier when Arthur is there. Holy shit. Moira enters his apartment claiming that Neil told her to come over because he had information about Elsie, but then it's revealed that Arthur actually killed Neil because Moira finds Neil's head in the microwave, and then Arthur says that Elsie told him that Neil was responsible for Ellie's death due to him wanting the money for the will. This is about as convoluted as all the Inside Number 9 episodes get. During the rehearsal, Stephanie breaks character though and asks about something involving the script, to which Steve tries to help her and walks off camera, and behind Steve we see a man slowly start walking towards the camera as the time code freezes. I know you can see this dude very easily, but I need you to remember what he looks like, okay? Okay, got it. Reese leaves the dressing room and goes to the set to talk to Stephanie, who begins acting like every old white woman in a horror movie. Stephanie tells Reese that Alan called and that they shouldn't be in this studio. The technology can make them stronger and they can infect the cables to do whatever they want. And then Reese reminds her that this isn't Black Mirror and goes to make some tea. Stephanie turns to look at the current camera that's broadcasting live and says, we have to leave. We then go back to the dressing room that still has Stephanie's camera on the TV, and oh god. Oh hell no, she did. Steve's on his phone facing away. He doesn't even give a shit. Cut to outside of an electrical area. A mop bucket does a funny. Cut to a very Scottish priest performing the exorcism as mentioned earlier.
I am not a threat.
And then the live feed goes into Reese's bicycle helmet. We see him make himself some tea, and then he hears some bang outside, so he goes to investigate. He wanders through the electrical area a bit until he finds the prop head of himself that was in the microwave earlier. After he picks it up, he goes to turn around and Steve runs up and just scares the shit out of him. Reese is rightfully irritated at Steve, but he can't be mad at Steve forever because he dies. Steve! Before we can get Reese panicking too much though, it cuts to a news reporter talking about the death of Alan Starr. I wonder who this dude looks familiar to. The reporter plays a recording of what is assumed to be a paranormal entity, and the recording says, "Let us be," very, very distortedly like. We cut to another news report about a fire that broke out in a warehouse near Granada Studios that destroyed a lot of props and outfits and all that shit. All of a sudden, we abruptly reach the climax as Reese is seen running through the halls back over to where the set is, being like, oh well, my friend just died, lol, like a fucking pussy. While he's calling for help, he runs into Stephanie's body, which is fun. He doesn't have to look at it too long, frankly, because the power goes out. He wanders around through the darkness. His camera has night vision so we can see what's going on. You can get a look at the set that was presumably going to be the cemetery that's referenced in the, original Deadline script. He finds his way to some stairs, presumably just as a Hail Mary to try and break out, but then someone knocks him over and he falls and breaks his neck, maybe, I don't know. And the last view we get is of a bunch of ghosts, presumably all the ghosts and shit that have died near or on the grounds of Granada Studios, one of which... And that's actually the last clip. That is a live broadcast from this studio. We immediately cut to an interview that they did on a show called The One Show, which I'm going to take a bold guess and assume that's on BBC One.
Are you believers in ghosts? Do you have, are you very much kind of open to believing that there is something out there?
No. I like the idea of ghosts. I like the idea of ghosts, but I'm very aware that it's all
they're not real.
It then cuts to a scene from A Quiet Night In, the video that they tried to play a repeat of very early on, where Reese and Steve's characters just get shot in the head. The ghosts proceed to play this clip over and over again on loop, repeating and getting more heavily distorted until eventually it all cuts to black, and there is a single female voice saying,
"Let us be."
Then we get the BBC Two Please Stand By card again, and it's silent for a bit, till music comes in, and we're like, oh, we're safe, and then the music starts to pitch down, and it's like, oh, we're not. We actually are safe, though. Shortly after that happens, it goes to the credit sequence, then that's over, and then the announcer, who is presumably unalived in the first 10 minutes, comes on and says, there was no harm done to announcers in this video. Lol.
No continuity announcers were harmed in the making of this program.
So, that was the episode. Why do I simp for it so hard? Think about how much of a perfect storm this shit was, right? I need to remind you, pretty much nothing that happened after the first 5 minutes of the show was ever talked about publicly at all. Nothing about this ever got leaked. There was never a hint that it was going to be anything other than just a clear-cut Coronation Street soaked looking ass thing that they were promised. And to be able to just completely subvert that shit in a way that actually makes sense thematically with where you're shooting and what you're doing, it's holy shit. For example, the interview excerpt they used, that was actually about this Deadline show where they didn't know that this was going to happen. So the fact that she asked a question about whether or not they believed in ghosts, and then they later used that to convey how the ghosts were vengeful towards these people for not believing in them. It's so perfect. It adds such a sense of realism, and that's the shit that I crave in the horror that I consume. And also, in case this is on any of your minds, Alan Starr is not a real person. He was entirely fictitious, made up for the show. The newscast that was talking about his death and the paranormal thing was fake. But the fact that they managed to mesh his story in with a previously aired show, and the fact that Steve just listed it off completely inconsequentially with everything else he was reading that actually happened, it was brilliant. It was awesome how that was conveyed. Not to mention the tweet earlier. That's a very nice touch. And if I'm this fascinated by it as someone who just ran into the video at one point, I can only imagine what it must have felt like to be one of the few 100,000 people who were watching it when it happened. What I wouldn't give to be able to experience this again as if it were live, to just have this rerun start, be so disappointed that your show got canceled and everything, only to see this motherfucker just come into the fucking blue like 9 minutes in and just completely derail everything. I really do think this episode is a masterclass in subversive storytelling. The entire series is really good, but this episode in particular, especially for someone like me who loves analog horror and like kind of ARG kind of storytelling, this just scratched an itch that I didn't even know I had. If you enjoyed the episode that we talked about today, I definitely encourage you to check out any of the other Inside Number 9 episodes. It's not uncommon for them to include twists in their episodes too, like they did with this live show, and most of the time I don't see them coming at all, which is probably just because I'm stupid, but you know, if you're a fellow stupid idiot, dumb baby piece of shit, you'll probably like it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video of me talking shit, and if you want even more of me talking shit, check out this video. This is a new podcast I'm running with my friend Gordon and his partner Lexi, who I'm also friends with, I should clarify. Y'all ever want to know about a small town in New Hampshire that got completely overrun by bears? Because it's there. Also, I did another DJ set on Saturday. If you like drum and bass and techno, you should definitely check it out. There's a few different genres on there, but those are the main two ones. It's up to you, though. No pressure. I'm not your dad. And I think that's about it. Let me thank some bitches. Shout out to the patrons: Gordon, Hakaimono, Foxy Boy, Kyla Cray 95, Fox Named Ari, Alley Cat VR, Jargy Roo, Theo Firefox, Serial Saurus, Beast King Barbaros, Uber Bounty, Joel, Aki, SF Serval, and Squall. And the Ko-Fi donors: Apple Juice Dragon, Beast Churger, Bro, Jaribi, Theo Firefox, Gordon, Kakaro, Levy, Enjoy.tj, and Welcome the Wolf. Also, just on a serious note, thank you all for bearing with me for the last little bit. I did come to the realization last week sometime that I need to start taking better care of myself in real life, and that's going well so far. I'm putting more effort into doing that shit, which I know you shouldn't care about because I'm not trying to be all that level of parasocial shit, but what it does mean for you is that videos should be coming out more consistently, to hopefully, probably. That is assuming this video goes live on the day it's supposed to. It is currently Tuesday night, and this is supposed to go up in less than 24 hours. Whoops!